Hey guys, Dr. Ashley here. So, we have been talking about graduation week for me. We've been talking about how I graduated from medical school and it seemed like everything was going well, except I didn't really feel good and ended up going to the hospital and getting a workup. I had cough and the worst headache of my life and some fevers, and basically they were going to do a bunch of labs, but they said that I seemed really appropriate. It didn't seem like I was having some kind of horrible brain problem going on. So they said they're going to send me home after they get the labs back. But as I'm sitting in the ER, I'm getting increasingly more and more confused and more forgetful. So their original plan was not looking positive, and then they get the labs back and decide, no, they're not going to send me home in a few hours. They're not going to send me home in a few days, and actually end up admitting me for several weeks. So turns out I was diagnosed with bacterial meningitis, which is basically like an infection of the brain. And so I was very lucky. I think I got there early enough that it wasn't obvious exactly what I was dealing with. But thankfully the labs and stuff were appropriate, and I got treatment, I think a little bit sooner than I probably should have. And so it wasn't quite as bad as it could have been. It can be deadly for many people, and people can lose limbs and lose their ability to communicate. And so I'm very thankful that I'm still here and still have quite a bit of ability. So anyway, so I was admitted to the Round Wing after I got out of the ER. The Round Wing is a part of Vanderbilt that is secluded in a completely separate building. So most of the rooms are over in this building, and if you literally leave the building and go outside, then there's another place. It's one of the older facilities called the Round Wing. And generally, people are not admitted here. Most people are admitted to the main Vanderbilt place, but someone, and I'm not even sure who at this point, was being really thoughtful and really kind, and decided to put me on a service where instead of interacting with a lot of medical students and other people who I would have to do like walk out the rest of my career with. They put me on kind of like a separate service where I wouldn't have as many people seeing me and as many people involved in my care. So obviously, I was going to be going to the pediatric hospital, which is in a different building, but you do a lot of interacting with people, somewhere between medical students, going to the cafeteria, consult services will sometimes go back and forth. And so it was a really thoughtful way to kind of take care of me and kind of uh, put me off in a place where not as many people would know what was going on. So theoretically, it should have been a place where I was just kind of hanging out in the Round Wing by myself and not really worried about anything. But what's interesting, I should have never ever had to go to that building ever again, right? But of course, that's not quite how it went down. So when I had a patient later that was a teenager, and it's really not a great story, but essentially he was trying to go to a party and asked his parents, and his parents said no. And so he got really mad, went to the kitchen, picked up a knife, and said, am I going to hurt myself or am I going to hurt my parents? And it's just an awful story. So he basically put his parents in the hospital, one in the ICU and the other, he attacked them, and it was just a crazy thing. So we were trying to get him more stable and thinking about things in a better way. But we had to plan for placement, for long-term placement. So we had to talk to parents who were admitted to the hospital. So dad's still in the ICU, and mom is, guess where? She's in the Round Wing. So I had to return essentially to the seat of the crime, the one building I thought I would never have to go back to in my life, the place that literally changed the course of my life. And obviously, it was a difficult conversation just because of the subject of what was going on in their lives. but also it was difficult for me. It was difficult for me to deal with the emotions and the reactions that were coming up for myself as I ended up in this place where I was being triggered and basically remembering things that I thought I had put out of my head for forever. So it's interesting because when I was teaching medical school, the reason I've been thinking about this, when I was teaching medical school, I had to walk by the round wing a couple of times this year. And it's still kind of foreboding to me. I didn't have to go in the building, so it wasn't that bad. But something about seeing it just makes me a little bit uncomfortable, even to this day. And returning to the scene of the crime just reminds me that I'm not better, right? That there's still this part of my life that I'm never going to fully be able to get back, right? Like there's this part of my life that will always be a struggle for me. But what's beautiful about it now is I can kind of see how far I've come. Um, the rambling, well, I still ramble, but the young 25-year-old who like doesn't know where her car is or what's wrong with her, but just needs help. But now being able to, put all of this together in a way that I can actually teach it to someone else and understand it for myself emotionally as well. Um, so Psalms, sorry, I had the verse up over here. Let me read it. Psalms 103, verses 1 and 2 says, "Praise the Lord, my soul, all my inmost being, praise his holy name, and forget not all his benefits." And I think that's such an interesting concept because when we're thinking about this story, I mean, honestly, there are a lot more negatives than there are positives, right? I'm in the hospital. I'm suffering from something that could literally kill me. Like it's not going well. But there are these beautiful benefits that kind of help make it possible for me to keep going. And one of the best benefits in my case was my team putting me somewhere that was safe. And then also, they would actually test me. They would literally pimp me when they would round. They would say, like, why are we using this antibiotic, Ashley? And what are we going to do with your IV fluids tomorrow? And they would ask me questions that they would ask someone that was rounding on their team, someone that was about to be a doctor, so that they could make sure, one, my brain was working that way, but also that they could just prepare me to go back to where I was trying to go, to get back into the dream and the career path that I had been kind of knocked off of. So, who is on your team? Sometimes there are people in the background or people that really alter the way that everything goes. They help you get to a place where you couldn't have gone before. And these, I mean, honestly, the resident and doctor that worked with me those couple of weeks, I can't even remember their names to this day. But I'm so thankful for the decisions they made, the interactions they had with my family, who speak so highly of them, and just the opportunity makers that they were for me to get me back to a place where I believed it was possible to keep going in spite of the obstacles that were so obviously there. So I hope you spend some time today thinking about who's in the background that's on your team, the cheerleaders, the people that sometimes you can't even see, not necessarily the mentors who will, introduce you to the right person, but the people who are in the background moving things that make it a great opportunity for you to go. If you've got a great person in your background, share below. And I will hopefully see you tomorrow. Have a good one.